Already competing is decathlon world record holder Dan O'Brien, but it's been 2 years since O'Brien won gold in Atlanta, his last full decathlon. We spoke yesterday, and I asked O'Brien if the long layoff will prevent him from competing at a high level here.
A decathlete always is dinged up. I got a lot of little aches and pains, a sore ankle, a left hamstring that's been giving me a little trouble. But, you know, my training's been telling me I'm ready. And the competitions I've been in have been telling me, you know, you're ready to go. But I haven't competed as often as I would have liked this year, so I don't quite have that competition sharpness to have that confidence going in.
You said back in May that you felt the world record in the decathlon could fall this summer. And then you backed off that statement a little bit. At this point, do you think that record can go?
Absolutely. I think with the right wind conditions, with the right, I think if it doesn't rain, with the right weather conditions, it really could. Not just by me, but there's a couple guys in the competition that really have a good opportunity. Tomáš Dvořák from the Czech Republic. You know, Chris Huffins scored very well at the U.S. Championships, but I'm very, very nervous at this point. And that's telling me that something good's going to happen or something really bad is going to happen. And I think if I can just stay focused, use this nervous energy, something special might be coming.
Chris Huffins is really kind of taking dead aim at you.
Yeah.
He's compared himself to you. What's your assessment of him as a decathlete? And you've mentioned he might be the guy to be able to do it.
Well, Chris is a great athlete, no doubt about it. He's a great decathlete, and he's worked hard to get to where he's at. He worries me a little bit because he's like I was when I was that age. And back then, I had my sights set on Dave Johnson. And Dave was a very motivating factor for me, and I think I'm doing that for Chris.
Do you think about getting beat by one of these up-and-comers and what that might be like?
I think about it. You know, I think about what it might be like to get beat, but you know, the key to the decathlon is concentrating on your own stuff. You know, if I'm watching somebody else throw the discus, then, you know, I'm not concentrating on what I need to do. But for years and years, I put so much pressure on myself to be the best that there were times when I seriously didn't enjoy it. And as I go into the Goodwill Games and the 1999 World Championships and the Olympics in 2000, I want to enjoy this. And if I'm not enjoying it, then I don't want to do it. So, you know, before the Olympics especially, there was no second place for me. Second place was a failure, I thought. I was going into Atlanta to win the gold, and if I didn't win the gold, I think that I had failed in my quest. So as I go from this point in my career on, I better have fun or it's not worth it.
A second place is not considered a failure anymore?
I don't think so. I can live with myself. I'm in a situation in my personal life, and I have people around me that I think no matter what happens from here on out, I'll be happy with whatever happens. And I've told everybody, I'm going to stay in the sport until somebody beats me. And if somebody beats me, I'm not going to quit, I don't think. But I know that, you know, second, third, or if something happens and I don't get a chance to finish, you know, I'm going to go back to Scottsdale, Arizona with my girlfriend, and my dogs are going to love me and lick my face all the same.
The decathlon 100 meters was run just moments ago, and after false starting, O'Brien finished in 10.71 seconds, getting edged out by Chris Huffins by 3/100ths of a second. O'Brien ran it in 10.43 seconds when he set the world record in France back in 1992. His finish today was worth 926 points, 66 points off his world record pace.
Let's go. Big story. Dan O'Brien returning to the decathlon for the first time since his Olympic triumph. On top of all that is Dwight Stones, and we get a report.
2 years ago, Dan O'Brien was the toast of Atlanta, the world's greatest athlete, following his gold medal performance in the Olympic Games. But in the ensuing 2 years since Atlanta, O'Brien has not contested a decathlon, due in large part to injury and a general lack of motivation. Last summer, this man, Tomáš Dvořák, scared O'Brien's world record. And American Chris Huffins just keeps getting better and better. The first day of the two-day decathlon, the 100 meters, an event O'Brien used to own. Starting out of lane 2, his main competition, the American, Huffins, the national champion in lane 4. From the gun, it was O'Brien, with Huffins struggling in 4. At 50 meters, Huffins catches O'Brien. And at the tape, Huffins ekes out a 3/100ths of a second victory into a stiff headwind. Right Right of the screen, O'Brien, loose and relaxed. Huffins struggling, and Dvořák in the middle. After the event, Lewis Johnson spoke to O'Brien.
All right, Dwight, thanks. Dan, I imagine on paper you've scribbled down what you'd like to accomplish here in the first day, and it's been 2 years. Are you where you want to be?
Well, I would have liked to have run in the 10.5s, and I think I could have done that had we not run into such a stiff headwind.
Right.
It's only direction around the 100. I'm sure Chris wanted to run faster, but, you know, it was the same for everybody. Not a lot of guys even under 11 flat, so that's encouraging.
And the results show Huffins only in the lead by 7 points after one event. Back to Ernie Johnson.
All right, thank you very much, Dwight Stones. Tomáš Dvořák, a twist to the decathlon story we will chronicle as the night goes on. And still to come, much more on day one for Dan O'Brien in the decathlon.
Second event of the first day of the decathlon, the long jump, and the leader overall, Chris Huffins, on the runway. Good speed and a good tailwind behind him, and he gets all of the board. No mark in the plasticine, 25.9 1/4 for Huffins, the best long jump of the afternoon. World record holder, Olympic champion Dan O'Brien, his first decathlon in 2 years, comes down the runway with a nice big win at his back. 25.6 1/4, the second best jump of the afternoon.
Chris, the wind seems to be taking center stage here at the Goodwill Games. Coach says you were ready for about 10.20 in the 100, but you had to settle for 10.68. What happened out there?
Well, you know, it's tough to run any sprint race into a headwind, especially a really strong one. I mean, we had what would be a great wind for decathletes if we were going the other way. But, you know, everybody runs in the same situation, and I think I ended up with the same point differential that I was looking for.
On to the third event, the shot put. Dan O'Brien always looking to make a move in this event. Huffins leading the overall competition by 24 points. On his third throw of the competition, O'Brien gets everything behind it. 51 feet 5 inches. A good solid performance by O'Brien. Then Huffins, the spinner, gets in for his third throw and just misses O'Brien by 1 centimeter, 51.4 1/2, and maintains a 23-point lead. Now the big story in the high jump, Tomáš Dvořák, the world champion from last summer, badly injured his ankle in the long jump, heavily taped in the high jump. In the competition.
And that is Mike Smith clearing of a high jump.
Normal pace. Huffins with the bar at 7 feet 1/4 inch. A big personal best at last month's nationals, and he floats over easily. And Dan O'Brien, after making 6.11 on his third attempt, comes at 7 feet. It is not to be today. And Huffins stretches his lead to 51 points going into the last event of the first day, the 400 meters. Absolute torture for these decathletes. They've been out here for 5 hours in the heat and the humidity. Chris Huffins, 51 points ahead of Dan O'Brien going into this event. O'Brien, a much better 400-meter runner than is Huffins. O'Brien will be in 2, Huffins in 4, and they can both look at the best 400-meter runner in the field, Estonia's Erki Nool, out in lane 5. And as the sun started to set on Mitchell Athletic Complex, the last event of the grueling first day of the decathlon, and Nool was out fast. O'Brien and Huffins in pursuit. Nool, fourth from the right of the screen, picking up the pace. Huffins just to his left, trying to stay in contention. And the always dangerous Eduard Hämäläinen of Finland on the outside of Nool in lane 6. Coming around the turn, it was Nool, but O'Brien making a major move with just 110 meters left to go. It looked like O'Brien would steal the race, and then Nool makes the move. O'Brien cannot respond. In lane 6, the Finn, Hämäläinen, making a move down the home stretch, but it was Nool into the headwind who wins it. Hämäläinen second, and O'Brien everything he's got left to hang on to third. Only barely outdistancing Huffins by only 0.13 of a second. Not enough to close the gap at the end of the first day. Right of your screen, Dan O'Brien, right where he always makes the move in the 400, but the tank is empty. And Nool in the all-blue of Estonia, with 2 world-class decathlons in his back pocket this year, lifts strongly down the home stretch into the teeth of a headwind. He will finish first. O'Brien will finish third. And at the end of the first day, it's still Huffins by 45 points. Nool was hurting after the 400. So was O'Brien.
Dan, did you feel those 2 years off in that last 10 meters there?
Oh, I definitely did. I think if there was any part of this decathlon that was going to be skeptical for me was overall fitness. So I had a great first 4 events, felt good. I just didn't get in a good rhythm on that 400, so I need to come out tomorrow and blast the hurdles.
As you sat and thought about this whole thing, are you basically where you wanted to be after the first day?
Well, after that high jump, I was ahead of my Olympic gold medal pace. And I dropped back quite a bit right there, but I think I can get it back. I've been vaulting very well. My discus has been consistent this year, and I know I can run a fast hurdles.
So at the end of the first day, it's Huffins by 45 points. Nool, Hämäläinen, and Dvořák way behind. Anything can happen the second day. More decathlon tomorrow. But at the end of day 1, the 400 meters, and Dan O'Brien's tank was empty. And because of his poor performance in that 5th event, he trails Chris Huffins by 45 points. Down in 4th, Tomáš Dvořák, the 1997 world champion, 400 points off the pace due to an injury he sustained in the long jump and a horrible performance in the high jump. Beginning of day 2, the 6th event, the 110-meter hurdles. The event that O'Brien has been contesting most since his gold medal performance in Atlanta. Dvořák and Hämäläinen, both good hurdlers, but O'Brien knew he had to have something extraordinary here to kick off his second day. O'Brien explodes from the blocks in lane 2, first over the first hurdle, and just begins pressing his advantage. Dvořák trailing, Huffins in 3rd, but it's O'Brien with certainly something special, an all-time personal best in a decathlon 110-meter hurdles. 13.67. O'Brien has not contested a decathlon in the last 2 years, but he's been running a lot of hurdle races to prepare for Goodwill Games. With no win, his technique was almost flawless. And an all-time personal best in the event in a decathlon reversed his fortunes with Chris Huffins. Right after he crossed the finish line, he spoke with our Lewis Johnson.
Back quickly to last night. You were blown out after the 400. Tell me quickly what you did last night to get yourself recuperated for today.
Well, I didn't get a good night's sleep before last night just because of the nerves. But last night I slept very good, and because of the late start, I was able to really sleep in. So I just think it was rest and come out motivated and aggressive. I think that was the thing that was lacking yesterday in the 400.
So after 6 events, O'Brien in the lead by just 16 points. Dvořák still almost 400 behind. More decathlon later. Let's go back to Ernie Johnson. The 7th event of the decathlon, the discus throw, and Chris Huffins, 18 points behind Dan O'Brien in the overall competition, knows that O'Brien's best events are ahead of him. After a terrible first throw, Huffins steps in the ring for his second throw. The discus, an event he's been working on all spring, pops it out near the 50-meter line, 163 feet 1 inch, a big improvement, and he's still in contention. Then O'Brien, after throwing one out of the sector, pops in for his 3rd round throw, putting everything behind it. O'Brien comes up 22 feet to 160 feet 4 inches and nudges into the lead. Now the 8th event, the pole vault. Chris Huffins dealing with the swirling winds down the backstretch, jumping at 15 feet 5 inches, just 8 inches below his personal best. And he figures out the winds and clears, but he would go no higher. He had to sit back and wait to see what O'Brien would do. O'Brien checks with coach Rick Sloan, himself a very good pole vaulter and high jumper during his days at UCLA. O'Brien on the runway for his 3rd attempt at his own personal best in a decathlon pole vault, 17 feet 3/4 of an inch, and he sneaks over on the 3rd and final attempt and has the best mark of the competition and vaults into the lead by 151 points. Eduard Hämäläinen, a distant 3rd place. Ernie?
Thank you, Dwight, and we'll have much more on the decathlon, including the 1,500 meters, which finishes it up live here later tonight.
The 9th event of the decathlon, the javelin throw, and Dan O'Brien, who is leading the competition by 151 points over Chris Huffins, steps onto the runway for his 2nd attempt. Doesn't have a very fast nor a very long run-up, but he's become a steadily better javelin thrower throughout the years. And he unleashes one well out over the 60-meter line. 217 feet 7 inches, just 2 feet short of his all-time personal best, which he set at the Olympic Games, and he passes the third throw to get ready for the 1500. Now, Chris Huffins, again, 151 points behind O'Brien after the pole vault. This, his third throw. Unlike last summer at the World Championships, keeping his throws inside that 29-degree sector, but very short on the first two. He lets it all go on the third one and gets out just over the 60-meter line. 200 feet 6 inches, so much closer to what he normally throws, and just one event left, the 1500, and O'Brien is now 229 points ahead. Ernie?
This is Marty LaCourie. I'm Ernie Johnson. This is Dwight Stones. We've lost the fourth part of our barbershop quartet. Just don't know where he went. Nice duds, huh? How about the decathlon here? And you've been on this thing for 2 days, and now Dwight Stones, you've got a man here who was second after day one, Dan O'Brien, with a chance for a world record.
A chance, but albeit is not running his favorite event, the 1500 meters. He's certainly capable of running the time that he needs to break his world record, a little over 4 minutes and 45 seconds. And when he ran the 1500 meters at the Olympic Games in Atlanta, the conditions were somewhat similar to this. So he certainly is capable of it. He's older, more mature, stronger. Therefore, he should be able to run this kind of a time. His personal best is under this kind of a time. It's a matter of his motivation, frankly. He's going to get a Goodwill Games record easily. Does he want to go after the $100,000 that a world record in the event represents? I think that's what we really got it down to.
What do you think his mindset would be going into this?
Well, I'm impressed that Dan, who's usually very gregarious, wouldn't do an interview with our Lewis Johnson. I think he is focused. He's really got a game face on. But I think Dwight's been watching it. You know, 7 of the events in the decathlon are about technique, about tremendous concentration. But now in the 400, yesterday he had a little bit of a problem. Now you get to the 1500 meters. If you haven't run the miles, you're not going to be able to run a fast time. No amount of desire, no amount of experience can hide the fact if he hasn't done the work.
Is there some rust evident in what you've seen in 2 days?
I have to tell you, Ernie, I'm very impressed with the way Dan has come back after 2 years. Really, the only faltering that he had was in the 400 meters, and he even questioned his own fitness. He said, coming into this meet, Dwight, the only thing I'm concerned about is my overall fitness. That would certainly impact in the 1500 meters. He doesn't like the event, but I think that he's old enough and mature enough that he doesn't have that many chances at a world record. He probably has to go for it. We'll know in the first lap.
So we're just about set for the 1500 meters in the decathlon, the final event of 10 over 2 days, and there is the man, Dan O'Brien. Will he go? We will see in the next few minutes. Coming to you live from Mitchell Athletic Complex on Long Island, the final event of the night. See some high fives being exchanged at the start line. And what do you think Dan O'Brien is feeling right now in the pit of his stomach?
Well, I know that he's fatigued. That's clear. And he passed up his last javelin throw to try to get a little extra rest before this race. I think he's got to be satisfied with the way he has competed after taking 2 years off from competing in the decathlon. He's run some 110-meter hurdle races. He's long jumped occasionally, pole vaulted occasionally. But I think he's got to be pleased with the way that he has come back after 2 years off. And I've got to think right away he's coming almost to the back of the pack, which he often does. I think he's looking at a Goodwill Games record, and that if he can come back after this amount of time and score this kind of a score, he thinks that there are world record days in his future. I don't know how many of them he has where he could make $100,000, but certainly he feels that he's got a couple more chances between now and the Olympic Games.
How about some rhythmic?
Yeah, it's tough to get motivated. He said his main problem in the 400 yesterday was motivation. It looked as if he went out very quickly in that 400 and had a good rhythm, although he felt he didn't have a good rhythm. But it really, I think when he reflected on it, he knew it was his motivation. As Dwight has said, he doesn't like this event. And that plays a big part in how you apply yourself, not only to the race, but in the training every day. And he's had 2 years where he hasn't had a goal, and he's really gotten it together. We want our decathlon heroes to be bigger than life. And I think if Dan were to get the world record after 2 years off, this would just make him legendary. This would make everybody forget about the pole vault fiasco in New Orleans. You know, you watched him in the decathlon. Every time he gets that pole in his hand, everybody's got their throat, you know, the apple in their throat. I don't know if Dan does. He ran 76, so he is right on pace to get that world record.
The man you see at the front of the pack there is Tomáš Dvořák of the Czech Republic, and now he has given the lead back to Erki Nool of Estonia.
And these guys are the best 1,500-meter runners consistently in decathlon, and they're also fighting it out for the third place. Now, speaking of third place, Chris Huffins, who looks to be pretty well into second place, if he runs a really terrible 1,500, which he is known to do, he could actually lose that second place to either Nool of Estonia or Dvořák, the world champion from last year from Czech Republic. But Chris is staying in there. He's actually ahead of Dan O'Brien right now. He doesn't want to let go of that. And Huffins has really matured. He had a very good decathlon at the National Championships just a month ago, and he competed well here.
And you made a good point earlier tonight that it's good to see him here in event number 10, given what happened at the World Championships in Athens. And after fouling in the javelin, he just disappeared, and we didn't hear from him for a while there. It was a very disappointing night for him in Athens, Greece. He's got his hat on backwards, running toward the back of the pack right now.
Well, he threw all three of his throws out of the sector in Athens last year. Got no points for the javelin, and very, very big disappointment for him. He could have medaled. He could have gotten a personal best. He's changed coaches. He's changed to the East Coast to train, and he really has matured. 2:24 for O'Brien in the second 400, so he's definitely off pace now. The Goodwill Games record appears to be in the bag, but the world record's off the win.
Go back to Huffins. Earlier, Huffins thought he was going to have a chance to beat Dan, and Dad said, if he can't beat me in the 1,500, he's never going to beat me. This thing didn't unfold as the second tier of decathletes thought it might be. You think Dan surprised them all?
I think Dan did surprise them to a degree. He was very solid in almost every event save the 400 meters, and as you said, he was in position to really strike, and there was no gas left in the tank to go to that bell lap. Erki Nool of Estonia leading over Tomáš Dvořák, the world champion from last summer, who actually scared Dan O'Brien's world record in that competition. Then the whole pack is left, and we got Dan O'Brien picking up and holding on to the rear. He's got to be so fatigued. Again, fitness the issue for him, but he's got to be pleased with everything but the 400 meters at this particular competition.
And you know, one of the things that we don't know about, it's been very humid. They've been out here for 2 days. If you're starting to cramp, you've got to cut back on your pace. It's conceivable that a guy could cramp up and have trouble getting to the finish line. So that might be in his mind. He's got to run conservatively. I notice he doesn't have racing spikes on, which a lot of the decathletes don't do, but that's another precaution to take as you look at his coach, Rick Sloan, who, like all of us, was just hoping to see some magic here tonight.
Well, I'm hopeful that in the next couple of years that Dan O'Brien will be in a position or a situation where he really needs to run the 1,500, and we'll see what he's made of. He's way back in the back. I've got to tell you, I'm impressed with the way Chris Huffins is running this 1,500. He's going after it. He's letting these guys in the front know, second place is mine, and I'm going to run like I care about this. I'm going to finish this thing with some heart as Tomáš Dvořák wins the 1,500 meters. Erki Nool of Estonia second. This is Eduard Hämäläinen of Finland going to be third. And Chris Huffins, who has really worked hard this 1,500 meters, and he's going to right at 5 minutes, just what he ran at the Nationals in New Orleans. That's an impressive performance for Chris. That shows that he's got some heart. And here comes Dan O'Brien, 5:08. He barely breaks the Goodwill Games record. So another 8,700 plus score for Dan O'Brien, who already has the most of anyone in history. I got to tell you, if I'm a decathlete, Dan O'Brien is far from dead.
We will hear from Dan O'Brien, who's a little bit winded at this point. When we come back, he'll be with Craig Sager. Keep it here on the Superstation. And welcome back to Mitchell Athletic Complex, where the decathlon is in the books and Dan O'Brien is the king again. Here's that old Cincinnati Bearcat, Lewis Johnson, with Dan O'Brien.
All right, thanks, EJ. And Dan, congratulations, a new Goodwill Games record. And I've got to ask you, which is sweeter? What's the stronger emotion? The joy of Goodwill Gold or the pain of 2 years off?
Well, I think with sweeter is just finishing. I didn't know what my fitness level was coming in. You know, I felt good, but it was all training. I wasn't competition sharp. So I just think having a chance at a world record going in the 1,500 was very encouraging for me. You know, I had great field events today and yesterday. I get better fitness. That 400 and the 1,500 today cost me the world record, but everything else was strong.
Let's go back to the 100 meters, where Rick Sloan said that he thought that maybe you'd have a better chance at breaking the world record had that race been run with the wind at your back. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I truly believe that. You know, I ran 10:71, and we had, what, a 2.8 into a headwind. You know, that's 3.5, 4 point. 0.4 of a second that we can add to everybody's score. Chris would have had a world record first day, and I think I would have had, quite a bit going into the second day.
The 1500, you hate it. You took an IV before the race. Does that help you a lot in terms of your recuperation?
Well, it helped me physically. I felt a lot better, and even the guys who won today, the 1500, they only ran 4:45, so I would have had to been up there with them. I just haven't done quite enough work in that event, but I guarantee I'd really like to go out in style in 2000 and score 9,000, so I think I can do it.
All right, Dan, congratulations on Goodwill Go. Let's go back to Ernie.
All right, thank you very much, Lewis. Congratulations all around for Dan O'Brien, winner of the decathlon. Really great to see him back in action, too, here at the Goodwill Games. He wins it. Chris Huffins second, followed by Tomáš Dvořák.